Thanks for tuning in to another Eastwood live video. Today we're going to be talking about the non-woven pads, also known as scuff pads, where to use them and why to use them and why you need them. If you've never tuned into one of these before, we try to make it as interactive as possible. We have Randy over here on the computer. He can answer stuff live. He can shoot the answers or questions over to me. I'll try to answer them live. But let's get down to talking about these scuff pads and why you want to use them.
So, don't we get to say anything?
Well, unless you want to.
I let you talk every time you're sitting over here. This is the first. Oh, you know, that's okay, Scott. You go ahead. Talk about your non-woven pads.
We get down. So we got paint season coming up right now, so it's a great time to talk about it. Temperatures are warming up. Got to paint a lot of stuff. So, so these pads, the reason they're so nice, they come in 3 different grits. We have our most aggressive, which is the red or the maroon, followed up by the green, which is our mid-grade, and then finally the gray. So we'll talk about where to use them and why to use them. So I grabbed this valve cover. It's old, it's beat up. So let's say we want to repaint this. As many of you know, if you're trying to grab a piece of sandpaper, you have all these little edges for the raised lettering. You have, come some valleys. Where using a typical sandpaper is going to be a nightmare because you're going to dig edges. It's not going to give you an even sanding ready for paint. So these scuff pads come in really handy, whereas the red one, they'll conform to the surface, and you can see with just very little work, I can take this thing, I can haze out the whole top and get it ready. And then, if you need to get into a little area, you can fold them over, and unlike sandpaper, they're not going to break because sandpaper is going to crack on the edge, all the grit's going to fall off, and it's not going to get in there, whereas these things won't. They can be used wet or dry, so if you're trying to do some cleaning work underneath the car or somewhere, you can also use them with a little bit of cleaning agent to make it that much better. But as you can see, just in a little bit of time here, I'll show the difference, so Joe can get it up on here. We have, it's completely sanded down, scuffed up, and you can see it's a nice smooth surface for the paint to go over. It's in all the little cracks. I mean, I could work and get in the letters if I really wanted to, but, just a quick amount of time, I wanted to show you how if I did this whole thing, now you're not sitting there with sandpaper trying to sand it down to bare metal. A lot of times you can paint over paint. So, I mean, that's the best use for the maroon one. You can also prep primer that's been sitting around for a while. If you want to just bring it back to life again before you go ahead and move on. If you're using a single stage paint, it can even cover the scratches that this leaves behind without a problem, so you're not going to see it. If you're working with base coat, you are probably going to step up to a slightly finer one to get it ready for base coat, and that's where the green one comes in handy. Each one of these, they don't have per se grits, related to them because they are a scuff pad. They're not an actual sandpaper. But to give you an idea, the red one is about 320, somewhere in that area. It starts off a little more aggressive than it wears. The green one is close to around 400, and then finally the gray one is about 600 to 800. So it can kind of give you an idea just by telling you that where you can use them as well. So one of the other uses that these are really nice for is if you have a bare piece of aluminum, which I'll bring in here, that you want to put a brushed look to, you can actually use one of these with a little bit of oil. We have some WD-40 here, but if you want to spray it on the surface, what this allows you to do then is take like a green scuff pad and just real quick, not too much work, you just work in the same direction, sits there and it'll give you a really nice brushed finish look. And if you like the smell of WD-40, it smells pretty good too. Not too bad. Take a little pre here, we'll clean this up so you can see what it's done in, no time at all.
How many foot-pounds of pressure do you apply there when you're using that scuff pad there?
Not too much.
You're
scuff
a pretty
pad,
big, strong guy.
Yeah, I mean, a scuff pad, you want to treat it a lot like sandpaper. You want to let the pad itself do the work. You don't want to get in there. Otherwise, you can dig in. So hopefully I can get this in the light just right there. It looks like a pretty good shot there. You can see how it gives you that really nice brush finish look in no time at all, as opposed to over here. So if you're doing like a fuel cell, you want to give it a brush look, a little bit of WD-40 and a green Scotch-Brite, and you get a really nice color, a really nice finish to it.
Scott, this appears to be one of our top 10 most watched live videos.
Well, that's a good thing.
I'm not joking with you.
That's
right
a good
now.
thing, with paint season coming up. Everybody wants to know how to get their cars prepped. One of the things, you're probably going to be working in your engine bay. You're going to be working in your trunk or in the car. And you know, there's so many little brackets and areas for sandpaper to get destroyed on and ripped up. You know, that's where these also come in really handy. I mean, they will eventually wear down. You'll see where you've been scuffing for a while and they don't seem like they're doing as much work anymore. That's when it's time to grab it, pitch it, and get another one. And the neat part is you can trim them to whatever size you want. So if you only need a little bit to get in a tight area, just cut a chunk out of this. Doesn't really matter. I've even taken this, and if I'm doing a lot of new panels come with that, you know, black primer on. It's a good strong primer. It doesn't have to be removed all the way, but you want to prep it quickly for paint. You can do it with these, and I've actually stuck these to a Velcro dual action sander, just buzzed it on there, and that works as well. So that's a nice feature. But in the trunk, you know, under the hood where you have all those little brackets and braces and stuff, these things are golden. I mean, you can sit there and just work right around them quickly, and you're not beating your knuckles up too bad. You're not ripping up sandpaper. So there's really a good thing to use it on. The gray, where I use this almost all the time, is going to be plastic prep before you paint plastic. I've done the grill on my truck. I have an emblem on it that had a clear finish to it, and it had a chrome behind it, and it was just too bright. So I actually took one of these, scuffed it lightly with a gray scuff pad, cleaned it up with you know, a little bit of wax and grease remover, such as our pre-painting prep, and then I took a clear that had been tinted just a little bit, sprayed that on, and now it gives it a nice smoked look. And the nice part about this, since it's about 600 to 800, the scratches it leaves behind in the plastic, it does not show through the clear. The clear will fill it up and you don't have to worry about that. Just keep in mind though, when you are prepping raw plastic, to use an adhesion promoter first, because this is going to allow your paint to stick. Plastic has a bad habit of wanting to kick off paint if you don't use an adhesion promoter. We do carry a couple different types, so feel free to check them out. Figure good time to check in with Randy. We have any questions over there?
Yeah, we've got a couple questions.
Sure.
One is, would you use any of these scuff pads to clean metal before welding?
Yep, certainly can. That's a great question. I have red ones sitting around my house at all times with a little bit of low VOC pre if I'm doing any kind of welding. That's a great way to clean it up and know that you're not going to have any contaminants that are going to affect your weld, especially when TIG welding, because that welding, you know, that metal has to be as clean as possible. So these things are great for welding.
All right, two more questions. One is, would you recommend these or sandpaper for in a trunk area that has a lot of, you know, a lot of the grooves, a lot of the pressings in the floor, the stampings?
Sure, yeah.
Is that a good thing for a scuff pad?
That's a great
And another
thing for a
person
scuff
wanted to ask if we could see the brushed metal look on the aluminum one more time.
Sure, not a problem. So answer the first one. The question was if this is good to use in the trunk. This is a great thing to use in the trunk. I came from the collision industry, and these things, you go through them all the time because nobody uses sandpaper inside the trunk. There's just too many little areas. There's, you know, crush zones that are designed so there's little convolutions, and nothing beats this. You'll finish this up in the time the guy's still trying to find his sander. So these are the way to go. Brushed metal look, I can actually do it a little different this time. I'll use the red one. It's a little bit coarser, so we may have a slightly different finish. I'll hit this a little quick, and I'll try to leave a gap between the two where I don't hit so you can see the difference. Quick scuff it up. But this is also, imagine if this were, you know, some of our pre-painting prep, you know, and do this getting ready for a weld. You know you're going to be removing everything. And then what I do is once I'm done doing it with the scuff pad, I then take it, clean it off, and then I use a little bit more to make sure that I haven't left any residue behind or anything like that.
And we've got a pretty big video on doing this with our tri-flow radiator.
Yep, that's a good place to use it.
It's an aluminum radiator and it's an aluminum shroud. So if you look that up on YouTube, you can find that. Or if you're just interested in put a new performance radiator in before it gets hot out this summer.
Yeah, exactly. Now's the time to do it while you're not in the garage sweating trying to get that thing in there. So you can see it leaves a very, very similar finish, but you know, quickly you now have a nice brushed appearance. You know, you don't have that gloss, you know, and then you could couple this with, you know, our Exo Armor after you clean it all up and get all that stuff off, and the Exo Armor is going to lock that look in, so you know it's not going to go anywhere and give you that nice satin finish. So, I mean, these are the greatest uses for all these scuff pads, and with paint season right around the corner, now's the time to do it. You know, real quick, show again how easy it is on like this valve cover. If you're somewhere, I'll try to get this, we're joking and can film it. There we go. You know, in these little areas, you know, with sandpaper, it's going to be hard to get in there. But you can see how you just put it on your finger and just roll right around in there. It makes it nice to scuff it up and get it ready for paint. You know, the shine's gone almost instantaneously. These things just work so well. You know, imagine trying to sit here and sand it, whereas you can just run this paste over top of it. You know, get in all the areas and knock it down, you're good to go. So remember, with paint season coming up, now's the time to get your non-woven scuff pads, so that way you can get your paint prepped and be ready to go. Any other questions for today?
Yeah, we got one more question. What is the purpose of the WD-40 when you're using it on the aluminum?
Sure, so the WD-40 helps lubricate the area as you're scuffing it. It's kind of like, think of wet sanding. You know, it gives you that nice finish. With dry sanding, it's a little bit more coarse, doesn't really carry it away, but just kind of lubricates it like wet sanding. So, I mean, if that's all we have, you know, thanks for tuning into this live. As always, tune in Monday through Wednesday. We have our live videos at 3, and I hope you're inspired to go out and get some stuff ready for paint. Have a great day.